In the heart of South America, hidden deep in the dense jungles of Colombia, there was a legend that had captivated explorers and dreamers for centuries. The legend spoke of a golden city, rich in treasures beyond imagination, waiting to be discovered. This city was known as El Dorado, the fabled Golden One, a place where gold flowed like rivers, and wealth glistened in every corner. The legend began with a man, a chief covered in gold dust, who was said to rule over this city of wonders. The story of El Dorado had its roots in the ancient Muisca civilization, a group of indigenous people who lived in the highlands of what is now Colombia. The Muisca were skilled in gold work, crafting intricate jewelry, figurines, and objects for religious rituals. Gold was sacred to them, not a symbol of material wealth but a representation of the sun's power and the divine connection between the gods and the earth. The legend of El Dorado, however, was not originally about a city of gold. It began with the Muisca's ritualistic practices. The leader of the Muisca people, known as the Zipa, was said to cover himself in powdered gold, transforming into a golden figure. This figure would sail across Lake Guatavita, a sacred body of water, in a canoe, offering gold objects as sacrifices to the gods. The lake, surrounded by towering cliffs and dense forest, became a place of mystery and reverence. One day, a group of Spanish conquistadors arrived on the shores of the New World. They were driven by a thirst for riches, glory, and land. Led by the ambitious explorers, they heard whispers from the indigenous people about a golden chief, who ruled over a land rich with treasures. These stories ignited the imaginations of the Spanish, who quickly began to search for this mystical city of gold. The Spaniards, who had already plundered many parts of the Americas, were now obsessed with finding El Dorado. They believed that the city was located somewhere deep in the jungles, hidden from the eyes of the world. Driven by greed and the promise of wealth, they gathered forces, crossed mountains, and navigated treacherous rivers, all in search of the fabled kingdom. As the Spanish ventured deeper into the unexplored lands, they encountered native tribes who spoke of El Dorado but in vague terms. Each tribe seemed to have its own version of the story, adding layers of mystery and intrigue. Some claimed the city was located high in the Andes, others said it lay along the Amazon River, while a few whispered that it was submerged beneath the waters of Lake Guatavita itself. The journey to find El Dorado became a perilous expedition. Spanish soldiers, motivated by the promise of gold, faced the constant dangers of the jungle: poisonous snakes, disease-ridden mosquitoes, and wild animals. The terrain was unforgiving, with thick forests and towering mountains blocking their path. Yet they pressed on, believing that their reward was just beyond the horizon. The deeper they ventured, the more desperate the search became. The explorers began to lose faith, as no evidence of the Golden City emerged. Supplies dwindled, and many of the men succumbed to illness. Still, the legend of El Dorado continued to burn brightly in the hearts of the adventurers. The idea of a golden city had become an obsession, a dream that was impossible to shake off. As years passed, more and more expeditions were launched to find El Dorado. Each failed attempt only fueled the myth further, turning El Dorado into a symbol of ultimate desire. The explorers began to imagine that perhaps the city wasn't meant to be found, that it was a mirage, a legend meant to lure them deeper into the wilderness. The search for El Dorado became a cautionary tale, warning of the dangers of greed and obsession. Many of the conquistadors who set out to find the Golden City never returned, lost to the jungles, mountains, and rivers of South America. Those who did survive were often broken in spirit, their bodies weary from the long, fruitless quest. Meanwhile, the Muisca people continued their lives, but the arrival of the Spanish brought great changes. The Muisca's sacred rituals, including those involving gold offerings, were disrupted. The once proud and prosperous civilization was decimated by disease, war, and colonization. The golden treasures that once adorned their temples and chiefs were seized by the invaders, yet the city of El Dorado remained elusive. The stories of the Golden City continued to spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of other European explorers. In the 16th and 17th centuries, expeditions from Spain, Portugal, and even England continued to search for El Dorado. The legend evolved, and the once localized stories transformed into grand myths, with some suggesting that the city lay hidden in the heart of the Amazon or deep in the Andes. These explorers faced unimaginable hardships as they trekked through jungles filled with venomous creatures, crossed deserts, and scaled mountain ranges. Their hearts were filled with hope and greed, and with each new rumor and piece of information they uncovered, the myth of El Dorado seemed even more real. But despite their relentless pursuit, they found no trace of the Golden Kingdom. El Dorado became not just a physical city to be found, but also a metaphor for humanity's relentless pursuit of unattainable dreams. It represented the lust for wealth and power that drove men to the ends of the earth, often leading them to their own destruction. The legend became a symbol of obsession, and those who chased it were often consumed by their desire. Over time, the search for El Dorado faded from the pages of history, but the myth remained. The Golden City was never found, but it lived on in the stories told around campfires, in books, and in the imaginations of those who believed in its existence. The quest for El Dorado had become one of the greatest legends of the New World, a tale of ambition, desire, and the dangers of chasing illusions. Despite the failure to find El Dorado, many believed that the city was not just a myth but something more profound. Some suggested it was hidden, awaiting the right person to uncover it, while others believed it was a warning from the past, an ancient tale meant to teach humility and respect for nature's riches. In modern times, the legend of El Dorado continues to capture the imagination of adventurers and treasure hunters. While much of the world has been mapped, there are still areas of the Amazon and the Andes that remain largely unexplored, feeding the idea that El Dorado could still be out there, waiting to be found. Yet, as the years pass, fewer people venture into the jungles with the hope of finding gold. Today, El Dorado lives on as a symbol of South America's mystical past, its forests and mountains still echoing with stories of a golden city. The legend reminds us of the powerful force of myth, and how such stories can shape the course of history. Whether real or imagined, El Dorado has inspired generations of explorers and dreamers to chase after something greater than themselves. In the end, the story of El Dorado is not just about a city of gold. It's about the journey itself, the people who embarked on it, the lessons they learned, and the myths that continue to shape our world. For some, the treasure was not the gold, but the story of the quest and the belief in something magical, something unreachable, that keeps the human spirit alive. As the jungles of South America continue to thrive, the legend of El Dorado remains part of the land's soul, woven into the fabric of the earth itself. It's a reminder that sometimes, the most valuable treasures aren't those that can be held in our hands but those that live in our dreams, hopes, and stories.